Your home for GE2025, Money FM 89.3.
Good evening and welcome to GE Tonight. I'm Audrey Seek. We're entering the final stretch of this year's general election, the second to last day of campaigning now, before we all head to the polls on May 3rd. Tonight's topic focuses on political flashpoints that have come up in recent days and in recent rallies. While the cost of living and GST have dominated much of the narrative, so has the blocked multi-billion-dollar deal with income insurance and Allianz. We'll also have an overview of a few of the hotly contested wards to watch. So joining us today to help us unpack this, we have two guests with us. First up, Dr. Rebecca Tan, lecturer at the Political Science Department at the National University of Singapore. Rebecca, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
One more time? I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And we also have Dr. Gillian Koh with us, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Gillian, welcome to GE Tonight.
Good evening. Glad to be here. Good to meet you in the flesh, Audrey.
Finally, we've chatted so many times and now I get to see you in person. Okay, so you two have been following this race extremely closely, to say the least. Some surprises we've seen from the very beginning. Just want to start off by asking you, with everything that has come up in recent days, is this all different from how it began? Have the constituencies to watch changed at all? We'll start with you, Gillian.
Well, first off, I think that, I was not expecting Punggol to be hot, but it has become hot. Harpreet Singh was moved there, of course, as a new candidate, but more significantly, DPM Gan moved there. And we thought, well, it'd be safe, but not quite so. The second one is Jalan Kayu SMC, simply because of the issue you just mentioned, that's come up, but also something about the background of the contender there for WP, Mr. Andre Loh, has also arisen. Finally, Tampines GRC, we saw that as, a really huge multi-cornered fight with four parties there gunning for it, of course PAP, but WP. So, we thought it might be quite safe, but certain issues have also arisen since.
Yes, so you highlighted Jalan Kayu SMC, Tampines GRC, as well as Punggol GRC. Right. What about you, Rebecca?
I think it's about the same. I think the Punggol fight is one to watch because it's hard to kind of predict.
Yeah.
When you have basically almost a completely new team from Workers' Party, we haven't seen as much in previous elections. But of course, then Mr. Gun's, DPM Gun's kind of parachuting in, which was not anticipated because from Choa Chu Kang. So that was a surprise, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly on nomination day.
Yes, so let's start with Jalan Kayu SMC then. Let's bring in the Income Allianz saga. It has dominated headlines and social media in the final stretch this GE 2025, especially in this constituency. Let's hear from Labour Chief Ng Chee Meng addressing this at a rally on Monday night.
The proposed deal was done in good faith and was in compliance with the legal and the MAS regulations. However, as the details of the proposed Allianz plan surfaced, the government saw it differently and stopped it by changing the law. NTUC, we could not have known that the law would be changed, but we sincerely respected the government's view and accept it. In NTUC, we will do our best, and sometimes I'm sorry that it is not good enough. But we will learn the right lessons and we will do better.
All right, so Gillian, let's have you kick us off here. With all of this new speculation and people paying attention to this more, are you surprised that this has become such a big topic at this point of the election?
Well, I think that we knew going into the election this would be one possible topic that the alternative parties would bring up, and they did. And I think that, WP's really been trying to make the case that it matters and referred, of course, to the fact that the head of NTUC, the Secretary General, is there on the ground, trying to secure Jalan Kayu for the PAP. So, I think may have been brought up, but now it's much bigger than we imagined. With, of course, Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong saying that everything was looked through, and it was the PAP MPs that brought it up in Parliament when it was discussed last year, whereas there was only one WP MP who had brought it up previously, and then that the WP blocked the change to the legislation, or abstained, rather accurately put is abstained, the change that would allow the government to block the deal going forward. There's a much bigger backstory to it, but then of course in the clip you've heard, Secretary General NTUC, who would have overseen some, this big deal, saying that it was actually proposed in good faith, and he'd apologize and say that they'd do better. So I think it's huge because it's a big story. It was the big story of last year. Many people were felt that they would be affected by it if there would be a change in purpose to NTUC if it had been taken over by Allianz, but the heart of it is really actually the capital extraction scheme that would have been behind it, and would then allow the entities that created, send back to stakeholders $1.8 billion, which if NTUC's income had not been changed as an entity, as a cooperative to a corporate, would have had to distribute that among the cooperatives in Singapore.
All right, we will be bringing up a soundbite from SM Lee a little bit later on in the show, but I do want to get Rebecca's take on this. What do you make of this? Is this casting a shadow somewhat in PAP's campaign over in Jalan Kayu?
I think it's because the PAP's main battle cry this time around, especially against the WP, has been that it will be hindered. It is the best team possible, right, is the narrative that Lawrence Wong has been forwarding. And if we have opposition will prevent the best team from, governing Singapore in uncertain times and all that. And I think the Workers' Party bringing this up is to demonstrate, firstly, that the best team has obviously made mistakes. That's why they're bringing it up, that it was a mistake. Of course, it's also convenient that both Ng Chee Meng is obviously contesting against a WP candidate, but also Gan Kim Yong as head of MAS is contesting also a WP team as well. And so I think it's convenient, obviously, as a flashpoint or as an issue, because it targets two particular individuals that the Workers' Party is obviously opposing. So that's the first thing, I think. There was also that used, importantly as well, Chee Soon Juan also brought it up in his speech, when he did the lunchtime rally, where this was on his sort of litany of PAP failings. And this was one of those things. So I think it's not just the WP, but certainly it helps because the two kind of biggest individuals being held responsible for the sort of oversight, or however you want to present it, also happen to be contesting against the WP directly. So I think it helps that you've got that kind of convenience of kind of tactical advantage specifically for the WP, as opposed to a general argument against the PAP and its oversights or failings.
Yeah. So I know that we have a bit of a web going on here, but let's focus on Jalan Kayu SMC before we go into the other GRCs. Let's look at Andre Lau now, the WP candidate challenging Ng Chee Meng in Jalan Kayu. He's relatively new to the political stage, and we also just saw some drama unfolding with some leaked Telegram messages. If you're tuning in on our live stream, you should be able to see a screenshot there, which he has since apologized for, and again today. But with this issue becoming a flashpoint, what are your impressions of how he's positioned himself in this contest? And do you think that this hurts his chances at all of contesting in Jalan Kayu SMC? Gillian.
Well, going in, I think most people felt that as they listened to Andre Lau, for his age, he was mature beyond his years, and very articulate, and sort of got some of the key points down. Ng Chee Meng, on the other hand, trying to work the ground, and of course, really a big knob, for the PAP. of course, somebody who lost in the last election, but still was the Secretary General of NTUC. To your question then, this is a surprise. I mean, that presumably somebody in that close group with his, among his business school alum has surfaced what would be something about a character reference which has gone wrong, right? So it would put a dent on his campaign, and it is a little bit scary. Because we've seen this happen before in terms of surfacing of character from, previous posts and things like that in GE2020, and that was in relation to Reza Khan. Now, in that case, the Secretary General of WP stood up and, accepted her apology and said that we have to move on from there. People do change and they recant and they, redeem themselves. And so, that's what we're waiting for, that, the WP Secretary General would also, in addition to Mr. Lau's sort of apology, would say something about that. We need now a positive character reference in addition to what we've seen of Mr. Lau and now, the telegram messages.
Yeah, so Rebecca, what do you make of these developments?
I think it depends on how you interpret Mr. Lowe's telegram posts, right? So the big contention is particularly that he swears a lot. And it depends on how, who's reading those posts, because some of the social media response that I've seen have actually argued that it's made him more relatable in some ways, because what we often see in elections is we see a very polished version of candidates, right? We see very practiced rally speeches.
Their best selves,
exactly,
always.
of course. Someone's written their speeches for them, the shirts are all ironed and everything, and they look very, polished. And sometimes that can be hard to get a sense of, what a candidate is like, sort of their authentic selves. And in some ways, Mr. Lowe's posts, I mean, some of the responses I've seen have just said, well, I have these gripes too. Now, I may not swear the same degree that he does, but a lot of the same gripes I may have, whether it is have noise from fighter jets over National Day, right? Which has been a contention for places like Sengkang. These are things I can relate to, and in some ways that is made him relatable. While of course, some others say, he's swearing, he swears a lot, and that's a problem. Or that he was complaining about constituent, I think seems to be the one that is the particular sticking point when it comes to Mr. Lowe's complaint, the leaked messages.
Okay, Gillian, you wanted to chime in?
I think really it depends ultimately on the voters in Jalan Kayu itself. Are they tuned in? Does this matter to them? Do they find that it makes him more relatable? Are these, people in very established households, very, conservative, or, do you have young voters who find, yes, I think there are things that we're not happy with, and this is how we react. Yeah, is this a very angry person, maybe can be unhinged, or is this somebody who really we can identify with? So it really has to boil down to the people on the ground there.
Yeah. So I think it's a very interesting point that Rebecca brought up, that it can kind of humanize somebody as well. And I do want to bring in a comment from a live viewer. This is from Shannon. There's been a big rejection of cancel culture online. Do you think we're overly crucifying in politics as well, rather than letting our MPs learn from their mistakes? What's your take, Gillian?
It's a very harsh world, I would say. Having been on the receiving end of that cancel culture, it is harsh. But the thing is that, I would say it's an SMC. Are the stakes high? The stakes are high for the PAP because of who the candidate is. And so that's why, it really is going to matter. But I would say one more thing, that in social media, in our Institute of Policy Studies surveys, the voices online tend to be more supportive of the alternative parties. The conservatives and, people with the status quo, not really there.
Okay, so I want to get to beyond Jalan Kayu now. Let's hear from Workers' Party Harpreet Singh, who brings up another key PAP member who is also in the running in a very hotly contested ward. Let's take a listen.
A lot has been said about the Allianz deal. Mr. Ng Chi Meng was head of NTUC at the time, and he saw no problem with it. Make no mistake, he dropped the ball. We now know that DPM Gun also had a role in the transaction because he was chairman of MAS, the regulator ultimately deciding whether to approve this transaction or not. Mr. Tan Swee Chee has now written an open letter to all residents of Punggol GRC asking serious questions of DPM Gun. So let me say this to DPM Gun, and I say this respectfully. DPM Gun, will you answer Mr. Tan Swee Chee's questions?
All right, so DPM Gan Kim Yong now caught in the crossfires of all this. Punggol GRC also a race to watch, with WP's supposed star catch Harpreet Singh up against a veteran like DPM Wong. So it's looking like a real fight. Does that make this race even more interesting to watch? And should Lawrence Wong have left his so-called right-hand man in such a precarious situation, you think, Gillian?
Well, we've had Lawrence Wong explain why he had to move his right-hand man, the task
force man.
There. It is now, as Rebecca had said, now we can see that, both are related, both the candidates in Jalan Kayuan as well as Punggol, and in a very explicit sense. But for the facts of the case, I think what really mattered is the fact that, when it came to dealing with the switch from being a cooperative to a corporate for NTUC, and then the question of the money, that is within the purview of MCCY, actually, the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth that manages cooperatives. So when it comes to the legal and financial matters, it's really, under MAS, but then it's, where it was and it became problematic was when this file was then sent across. It didn't have to be. It was then when it became a hot issue, and then it was sent to another ministry. So it's complicated there.
It is
but
complicated.
finally, I think there was mention of Mr. Tan Swee Chee, who was somebody who really tried to say his piece, and fair enough, last year on this. But now it turns out that Mr. Harpreet Singh was actually, the legal counsel for him to make sure that, in his, utterances about the deal, that Mr. Harpreet would keep him within the bounds of that discussion. So I think then that sort of puts a layer on what Mr. Tan is saying as well, and it feels a little bit partisan. So net, does it really feel like it's something of public interest and yes, the ball was dropped, or is this really just again about politics?
Yeah. All right. So given the high-profile nature of DPM Gan being fielded in Punggol now, what's at stake symbolically here for the PAP, even if they were to win, right? What if they see a dip in votes? What happens for them then? Rebecca?
I think we might see a similar phenomenon that happened with Heng Swee Keat with East Coast GRC in 2020, where even if he wins, a dip in vote is almost seen as a vote against or representative of the team, right? Because now he's presented as a key person on the team for Lawrence Wong, right? And Heng Swee Keat, of course, he was supposed to be Prime Minister, right? And so the dip against him was interpreted as a broader indictment of faith in what was supposed to be government, right? And so now DPM Gan has the weight of almost kind of like representing the team, even more so than Lawrence Wong, because Lawrence Wong has played him up as his right-hand man. And so he's almost like the next, not the next Heng Swee Keat, but like almost, it's a similar symbolism, I think. And I think any dip in the vote, any sort of seemingly poor outcome will be both indictment of him, seen as an indictment of him particularly, but also then an indictment of the team. And whatever that stands for. So I think that's the kind of interpretation. I'd see it as similar to East Coast GRC and the response that we saw to that.
All right, so I want to bring in Tampines GRC now. I know there's so many moving parts here, but I'll kick off with a soundbite from Workers' Party Pritam Singh.
Why do you think Lee Hsien Loong and Lawrence Wong are going to Tampines, going to Punggol, and I'm sure they'll be here in East Coast also. Have they abandoned the other constituencies? The PAP only listens when it loses vote share and parliamentary seats to the Workers' Party.
All right, so this has also shaped up to be one of the most unpredictable races this election, a rare four-cornered fight here. And on a previous episode of GE Tonight, we had a guest, Associate Professor at NTU, Walid Abdullah, who weighed in on this. So let's hear what he has to say about that.
It's 25% Malay, the highest GRC. The proportion is the highest amongst the GRCs. So it will be significant, Faisal versus Masagos. This has happened in Parliament before as well, the clash of swords. The one thing I would say is, other than Faisal, the WP team is a good team, but it's a new team.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure how much of a challenge they can put up. We'll see. But maybe just to push back a little bit on your characterization just now, you said it's solidly PAP. I don't think that has been tested. In 2011, Mabautan's team got, 56 plus 54 to 56%. So it wasn't a clear victory. And in 2020, they got about 66%, but it was against the NSP. So it hasn't really been tested. People used to say that about the West, right? The West is solidly PAP until Tan Cheng Bock contested in West Coast. So we'll find out how solidly PAP it is this time.
So do you agree with Dr. Abdullah, Gillian? Do you think that, what's your sense of the opposition strategy now in Tampines GRC?
Well, I think when it was clear that WP would bring up certain issues, then, Tampines became somewhat more interesting to look at. And also when it started to when on nomination day, Mr. Faisal Manap was fielded there. He's part of the A team in Aljunied Heartland, right? So I think that since then, the issue of race and religion has been brought up.
Yes.
I think mostly, not just for the Malay Muslim constituency, but, generally people who are concerned about, the humanitarian crisis in Palestine would have already sat up by the fact that, WP had included in its manifesto one step beyond what the PAP government has been prepared to do, which is to suggest that they would, advocate for Singapore to recognize Palestine as a state. So, we're at a position where we are with very, very many countries still at the point in the UN hewing to the idea that we should continue to work towards Palestine being that state. But, we stop at this point at recognizing the need for a two-state solution. And I think then what we've discovered since nomination day is that there's also been a lot of discussion behind the scenes and on Facebook among, clerics and politicians across the causeway to suggest that Singaporean voters and certainly adherents to the Muslim faith should actually vote for the candidate who can be the most aggressive on that point. And I think that's really caused it to be very, very fiery, completely unexpected. But, I think there's quite a lot of stake, not just for the two parties, but really, a discussion about Singapore's position on this, which concerns not just Malay Muslim people, but, all of us who are very troubled by what's happened in Gaza.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be getting to race and religion as well. But Rebecca, really quickly, what do you think about what's going on in Tampines? Is it still is it a four-cornered fight, or is it really a two-party situation now?
I mean, I think I would probably be generous a little bit and say the NSP still has a foot in the door. I mean, probably not as much as the Workers' Party, but they have contested the past 3 general elections. And they have won, as Walid pointed out, in 2011, they won 57% of the vote. The PAP only won 57% of the vote. So the NSP's been walking the ground for a while in Tampines, whereas the Workers' Party is relatively new to the GRC. So I do think the NSP is in, not necessarily with a shout, but it could translate. That's why, people are saying, it might end up whittling down the Workers' Party majority and therefore increasing the likelihood that the PAP will win, because basically the NSP takes away some of the Workers' Party vote.
Okay.
You said WP's majority.
Sorry, yes, not WP, sorry, PAP's majority. Well, I don't know who's majority at that moment, but yes.
All right, so we've seen the rise of sensitive issues like foreign influence and race in GE 2025, to your point, Gillian. And Tampines GRC has been at the center of this. Here's a soundbite from WP's Faisal Manap saying the race is not just between him and PAP Minister Masagos Zulkifli. Let's take a listen.
It is a competition between two teams. Okay, GRC 5-member team, right? Okay, so basically it's more of a team versus another team. So I don't see myself as going against Masagos. But again, being in the GRC, okay, which is a system established by the PAP, you must have a minority. And here I am, the minority for the team. Yep.
All right, so both sides have seemed to come together to unite on this front. How big of a role do you think identity politics will be playing this GE, especially in Tampines GRC? Gillian?
Well, it's going to be difficult to tell because I think there'll be a sublimation. That means this is pushed down or underground or within families, within households. This would be discussed, I think. So it'll be hard to get at, the extent to which, this is going to matter now. I think we'll see it in the polls, and then after that, we'll have to kind of do some research and find out what's going on, how this mattered. I think it will be significant. It's added to the question of how important or assertive the PAP has been on this matter, and certainly, within its broader outer orbit of supporters, if they've actually, understood why this question of Palestine is so important. And I'm referring, of course, to the kerfuffle that was caused by Kelvin Cheng, and involved then a few PAP politicians and been dealt with in different ways. But I think that's sort of left a sour taste in the mouths of people who really care about this issue. So the question is really how assertive and how strong is the PAP stance on this question.
All right, so Rebecca, I'm going to give you the last word here. How carefully do you think the parties need to tread when it comes to issues of race and religion, this GE, especially in such a multiracial society like Singapore?
I think they already tread quite carefully. So we've saw in the Workers' Party kind of say, yes, of course we did meet constituents about it, but no, we are not being influenced one way or the other. So I think they do tread carefully. It's always one of those sort of out of bounds, challenging topics that is difficult because at the same time the GRC system sets up minorities to be representatives of minorities, and if minorities do have an interest in this topic, then and you want to truly represent your constituents' interests, then it's hard not to talk about a topic that is potentially inflammatory. And I think that's the danger, is we want to be representative and talk about race and religion because it does matter to constituents, but at the same time not inflame tensions, and that's a really difficult balance to find on something quite as sort of very dear to lots of people's hearts.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to talk about and so little time. We will have to leave it there, but that was a deep dive into the flashpoints of this GE in the final days before we head to the polls this Saturday. That was Dr. Rebecca Tan, lecturer at the Political Science Department at the National University of Singapore, as well as Dr. Gillian Koh, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Ladies, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us on GE Tonight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. All right, now let's turn to what's going on the digital front. We have a social media update for everybody coming up in just a few seconds on GE Tonight, right after this.
As Singapore heads to the polls, Money FM 89.3 brings you front row access to GE 2025 with insights from experts and analysis of the issues that matter to you. Stay ahead with Money FM 89.3.
All right, now let's turn to what's going on the digital front. What's going viral on social media? Joel Lim is here to tell us all about it. He's the host of the Political Prude podcast. Hi, Joel.
Hello, thanks for All right, let's start today with something a little bit more personal but powerful.
Okay.
There are some social media posts going around, not because of policy debates or campaign jabs, but really because of very heartwarming acknowledgements of love and support for politicians' loved ones. So we saw WP leader Pritam Singh share a very heartfelt appreciation post for his wife, which drew a lot of positive reactions. And the comments on social media also applauded him for the post. I have one comment here from Shira saying, honoring your wife so openly sends a powerful message that strength isn't just about standing tall, but it also lifting up those who walk beside us quietly. You didn't just thank her, you gave her a voice. You gave a voice to every unsung partner out there. So that's very nice and very sweet,
It's very nice, and I do think it does humanize them a little bit. You see him, always very fiery at rallies, and then you get reminded, oh, he's a husband as well, a family man.
Absolutely, and even PM Lawrence Wong also has a similar post going around, because the photos of him and his wife during a walkabout also made its way onto the ST Live blog, and people are starting to discuss that. And I think there's just something about PM Wong's wife that always piques the interest of Singaporeans. I think she's like a royalty in some way.
Okay, so just to clarify, it's not PM Wong who uploaded any of these photos.
No, it's I believe the ST Live blog that actually updated them. Yeah, but so she was spotted doing a walkabout with him. So for me, I think these moments offer like a rare glimpse into the emotional core of public life, right? And it's a reminder that every leader often has a partner that makes equal sacrifices. And for me, it just reminds me that politics isn't just so much of a solo journey. It really is a commitment on the family end as well. All right, and from something more emotional to something a little bit more chaotic and energetic, something that I really laughed out loud when I first saw the clip online.
Okay.
So we all know that one of the battlegrounds is West Coast Jurong West GRC this time around. And, yesterday we just saw an unexpected showdown, not between the candidates, but actually between supporters. So during the overlapping walkabouts at the hawker centre, PAP and PSP supporters found themselves face to face, and it quickly turned into a cheer off.
Oh, all right. Do we have a clip of this?
Yes, let's take a listen.
Okay.
Very chaotic, chaotic.
All
yes,
right.
Yes, you're very
we get
passionate.
the idea, guys. But yes, it reminds me of, school, sports day kind of thing.
Very that. So online people had so much fun with it. Orientation school camps came to mind.
Yeah.
NDP crowd drills came to mind as well. Very silly, very nostalgic. Joaquin Gomez commented on it and said, orientation camp vibes, and one comment here saying, loudest cheer gets to eat first. It's very school camp. But the leaders themselves didn't not notice it either. PSP founder Tan Cheng Bock actually came out to speak against it, urging everyone for a little bit more restraint, saying that we should avoid all of that and let's not be so rowdy. I think that still absolutely holds weight, but in an election where things are getting a little bit tense, for me this one's a little bit more of like harmless fun.
Yeah. What is your take on this, Gillian? You think it's harmless fun?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
A bit unusual. We don't see it normally. So, parties have their own rallies, and so it's like fighting fish in their separate tanks. But in this case, the cheer off is very, very interesting.
Harmless fun. Yeah.
Harmless fun, yes. So I'm going to wrap up today's segment with a little bit of nerding out, because the Straits Times just dropped a comprehensive data visualization today, which actually social media really loved. Like if you look at the comments on the Straits Times post, people actually said good job to the data team at Straits Times. And one of the more fascinating segments actually zooms in on the age of the candidates, which is quite interesting, right? So the youngest candidate this election is just 24 years old, who is with the People's Power Party. And on the other end of the spectrum is once again Dr. Tan Cheng Bock as the oldest candidate at 85. And overall, the median age of candidates is 48. But for me, what's really interesting is actually, from my perspective and my vantage point, how this translates online. When we look at the younger candidates, for example, we see names like WP's Michael Theng, the PSP's Stephanie Tan, or Independent's Daryl Low and Jeremy Tan, or the PAP's Haslina Halim. They're all capturing the attention of younger voters or social media users online that lean a bit younger. I see their posts getting shared all the time. Their appearances on like the televised forums and podcasts are also making their way around. And I think it's really the sense of like younger faces, the novelty of younger faces, as well as the relatability that they have that's working in their favor. But at the same time, I don't discount, the older, more established figures in politics as well. We see Minister Ong Ye Kung, obviously now Mr. Gan Kim Yong and Dr. Tan Cheng Bock all racking up huge numbers as well with their strong video content, very clear messaging, and also their reputations that carry weight, right?
Yeah.
So something I started to think about, and since we have expert guests here in the studio today, maybe I'll pose these questions to you guys as well. Do you think a candidate's age affects how people expect them to behave or present themselves online during a campaign? Because when I observe these two different groups, it seems to have like this common thread that tie the two between together. So
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think it depends. So sometimes when you appear to be, so I think Dr. Tan Cheng Bock had this when he was, became sort of the Bay for the last election. When
Bay, BAE Bay?
Yes, right. People because the whole meme thing, right? I don't even know the lingo, to be
hype
honest.
bis uncle akong.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
know.
it is.
And that was an interesting one because I don't think he lent into it because he obviously is quite proper. As we saw from his reaction to the cheering, but he became this kind of like meme, and so I suppose they just hit like it just can hit anybody, like going viral. Can really hit anybody even if you don't expect it, even the oldest candidate. So I'm not sure. There's that expectation, and so when they appear cute, then maybe it works in their favor. They're like, I think he was seen as like a cute old grandfather kind of frame, and he ended up going viral for it.
It's true.
On the other hand, I think, the viewers who are more mature would be really struck by, some of the younger candidates, how they've put themselves across on social media, but also mainstream media. And they go, wow, this guy sounds eminently mature, well thought through, extremely articulate, not a raging young, they have stereotypes, raging young person who's just angry, but somebody who's really, coherent and comes across so well. I think that can win a few votes for people who have the opportunity to vote Michael Ting, to vote Andre Loh. I mean, in spite of what's sort of now been uncovered, I think that is the surprise element, right?
Yeah, I find that in politics, age is but a number. There are definitely pros and cons on either side, but this is an interesting thing to watch. And thank you for shouting out the Straits Times. They've been doing great work. I believe they're the ones who edited the Task Force Man meme that went really viral.
yes.
So everybody, check out the Straits Times. Some really good stuff there, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we all, sometimes carry a little bit of unconscious biasness. But for me, it's really about authenticity online. So that's all I
right.
have for today on social media.
Thank you so much. That was Joel Lim, host of the Political Prude. Thanks so much for the update, Joel.
Of course.
And that comes to the end of GE Tonight. And tomorrow is the final day, I can't believe it, of campaigning before we head to the polls on Saturday. So it will be the final time we will be touching base with you before the nation heads to the polls. We'll be wrapping up the key moments of the campaign season and leaving you with 5 important things to consider before casting your all-important vote of confidence. So join us for our penultimate episode tomorrow with Michelle Martin, 7 p.m. right here on Money FM. You won't want to miss it. More details and content, as always, will be online. Look for us on social media. We're on, I'm going to forget a platform here. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on LinkedIn. That's right. Money FM 89.3. That was GE Tonight. And from all of us here in the studio, have a great evening.
Tune in to GE Tonight at 7 p.m. every night on Money FM 89.3 for all the latest news and developments as Singapore prepares to head to the polls.
Money FM 89.3. 7 days was all she wrote. Kind of ultimatum note she gave to me. She gave to me. When I thought the field had cleared, it seems another